Hello, so we are live, and I want to welcome you all to the press conference, which is organized by My Voice, My Choice, an international movement fighting for human rights, reproductive rights, and dignity. Today, we are here with a very special mission. We are speaking about the importance of suspending the agreement, the trade agreement between Israeli government and European Union. Today we are here to speak up against genocide happening in Gaza. And today we are here because we want to give out to the people a joint message, which is that that kind of stuff needs to end. We are extremely happy and extremely proud that today we have a really diverse group of people, from people who are in the highest positions of decision making. These are the people who have the power to actually change something, to the people who are fighting every day on the ground, to help the people who are tortured, killed in this terrible genocide. Firstly, I will give the word to two amazing doctors who are working in Gaza to speak up about the situation there and to present the situation. So I'm giving you the word.
Thank you very much. So my name is Dr. Jeelani. I am a consultant pediatric orthopedic surgeon from Liverpool in the UK. And myself and my colleague Graham Groom are two of the doctors that have been on the ground in Gaza. So thank you for this opportunity for us allowing us to present what we have seen. We did have a third colleague who's usually with us, who's James Smith, but unfortunately can't make it here today. So I'm going to present a little bit about what it's like to be in an emergency room. And if I can, I just want to start with a video that my colleagues took whilst he was in Gaza. I hope you could see the destruction in that video, and that is an emergency room, and that's during a mass casualty event. Now, if I just give a little bit of an explanation, a mass casualty event is an event when there's more patients in a department that would overwhelm that department. And what we've seen consistently in Gaza by being on the ground, I've been there twice. I was there in March of 2024 for 2 weeks in Al-Aqsa Hospital where this video was taken. And then I've been there for a month at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis in September and October of 2024. And these mass casualty events would happen multiple times a day, multiple injured, very seriously injured patients. The most injured patients would be put into a red zone. There was a yellow zone and a green zone, and often the black zone, which was where the bodies went. I just want to kind of take you into the emergency room. So what you'd have is scores of people coming in. Often it was, and when I was there particularly, I was there during Ramadan, a lot of the mass casualties happened in the evening when families were getting together to open their fasts. And I just want you to picture screaming families, screaming parents looking for their children, children covered in soot and dust from airstrikes, limbs and no space on beds. All of those patients were on the floor. There came a point where we ran out of gauze to stop the bleeding of patients. Pregnant women, children, overwhelmingly so many children looking dazed for their family members. On the 17th of June, after the introduction of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has militarized its aid, Nasser Hospital had in 1 hour 300 patients. So can you imagine any healthcare system in the world dealing with 300 patients in a single hour? We've recently been in Brussels with a group of ours, and Avars means voice. And what I want to do, as well as telling you about what's going on in the ground, is be the voice for patients. And the patients that I want to be a voice for is this child. I hope you can see this picture of a 4-year-old girl. This 4-year-old girl was in Shifa Hospital after her house that she was in was bombed. She was brought to Shifa Hospital, and at the time when we were in Gaza, Shifa hospitals were sieged for the second time. This child was carried by her father, evacuating Shifa Hospital, where she was in a place where she needed care and attention. For 10 hours, he walked to Al-Aqsa Hospital to bring her to us, and she was completely, you know, she was on the brink of not surviving. And I don't know in what world we live in where this has continued for 20 months with largely inaction to the real human suffering that we're seeing in Gaza. This is one child that I've shown you, and Graham will present probably figures that he's seen, but there's countless children that we have both seen that are injured, have mangled limbs, have horrific burns. And I can't understate how horrific Gaza's healthcare system, which has been purposely and systematically destroyed, is not there now to sustain life. 36 of all the hospitals in Gaza have been targeted and bombed. The latest figures from the UN, the WHO, is that eight of them have been sieged and multiple times. There's a complete collapse of the system. And Graham, who I like to introduce, is one of my orthopedic colleagues who's recently just returned from Gaza, who can tell you a little bit more about what's going on the ground currently. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Graham Groom. I'm an orthopedic surgeon working within the NHS in London. I've been going to Gaza periodically since 2009 and intensively with my colleagues since 2014. During the war, I've been 4 times, most recently in May and June this year. We left on the 4th of June, but remain in very close touch with our colleagues. We were due on the 13th of May to go to work in the European Gaza hospital, but we arrived on the day when that hospital was put out of commission by a bombing campaign with 50 to 60 bombs all around it, which destroyed the water supply, destroyed the sewage system, destroyed the oxygen generating plant, and those were irreparable. The hospital was put out of action, the patients were evacuated, and my colleagues and I have worked for 26 days non-stop in the NASA hospital. And if I just tell you a little bit about the day, you have seen the nature of the horrific injuries, but each day we'll be woken between 4 and 6 by a dawn chorus of bombs, missiles, automatic weapon fire. We would start work in the operating theatre, in spite of the shortages, at about 8 o'clock, work through a planned list of 10 in the orthopedic theatre, 10 in the plastic theatre, 10 with another, 5 with another team, until we finished the planned day. Of those patients, 1/3 would be children who were very distressing, 1/3 would be women, and about 1/3 would be men of all ages. We have not knowingly, in the month I worked in the same place last August, or in the nearly 4 weeks we worked just now, seen a militant or a fighter or an activist. They have all, to the best of our knowledge, been civilians. And that, of course, would include the 2/3 who were women and children. Now, each of those children, each of those patients has a personal story and a disaster because they were essentially never injured alone. 3 weeks ago, yesterday, a little boy appeared at the end of our routine list to have his left arm amputated. We didn't have to do that, fortunately, by the grace of God. But he was one of 10 brothers and sisters. All his brothers and sisters had been killed in the blast that wounded him. His father was mortally wounded. Only his mother, who was a pediatrician working in the same hospital as us, survived. She went to work in the morning with a family of 12. She went to bed at night, if she went to bed, with 2 survivors apart from herself, and her husband later died. Just 2 left. I could tell you a dozen or more stories every day. Stories like that emerged from our work in the hospital. And of course, because we were, unlike other charities, we were completely embedded in the Palestinian system, we would live the lives of our Palestinian colleagues, all of whom had been displaced multiple times. And talking to them, you began to understand what displacement meant. A very brief notice to move, bombs would fall almost immediately, and the family, husband and wife, if there were still 2 of them, and as many children as they could, would gather what they had and move many kilometers to a patch of sand. Along the way, people might offer them a glass of water. Our colleagues had been displaced up to 20 times. On the other side, we worked because medical institutions have been assaulted in different ways. I did an operating list all day with an orthopedic surgeon who had spent 6 months in an Israeli jail and was too traumatized to speak of it. And the orthopedic and the theatre nurse had spent a year. He had formerly been a bodybuilder and would speak about his experience with the interrogation 3 times a month for 12 months, of the beatings and the torture that accompanied it, of the deprivation of food, the deprivation of sleep, the constant light, the constant noise. Now, I was brought up, I'm older than my colleagues, and I was brought up in the shadow of war in Europe. My father was a prisoner of the Japanese for 3 years in Java with many Dutch people. The tragic thing about the stories that my Palestinian colleagues told me was that they brought to mind the stories of that conflict and the brutality of the prison camps in the Far East. I would like to say also that the Nasser hospital, while we was there, was engulfed in the evacuation zone. It is still operative. I'm in daily touch with my colleagues, but it is isolated. It is much more difficult for patients and staff to reach it. If it closes, with it will be the end of the blood transfusion service in the whole of Gaza. It's all run from the Nasser hospital, and none of the other hospitals round about, the field hospitals, the NGOs from overseas, have an oxygen generating capacity. They have no oxygen. They cannot run an intensive care unit. The 42 patients in the intensive care unit at the Nasser hospital will die. If I have time, I would like to add that when the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began to take over the food aid program, the mechanism of injury changed. To that point, our patients were overwhelmingly injured by blast and by burns. At that point, the emergency department was filled with patients with gunshot wounds, entirely different type of wound, easy to spot the difference, and it meant that they had been intentionally targeted by quadcopters or by soldiers looking through their sights. I am absolutely full of the horrors of Gaza. I've been many, many times. I have left my exceptionally valuable and highly respected colleagues behind. And all I would say is that we are told many times that Hamas have been defeated, but the bombing continues. We hear from our own politicians that they are seeking a durable solution. While they seek a durable solution, every day, 100 Palestinians find their own durable solution in death because they have been killed. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you for sharing these testimonies. Thank you for the work that you are doing. And we still need to know that the things are still going on, that the genocide is still happening, and all the terrors are happening right now. People who can change this are people in positions of power. And often they don't dare to speak, they don't dare to say the word genocide, they don't dare to take actions. In the My Voice, My Choice community, we noticed how hard it is to get world leaders to speak. And one of the people who actually is willing to speak up is the Prime Minister of Slovenia. And even though Slovenia is a very, very small country, even though we do not have a lot of power, Slovenia was one of the countries that initiated the process for suspending the trade agreement between Israeli government and European Union. And I will now give the word to the Prime Minister of Slovenia.
Thank you. But first, let me thank Dr. Jeelani and Graham Groom for their courage, for their humanity, for all the work that you have done, but also for all the heart that you showed today. I really wish that all of us, all the leaders of the world, will be witnessing this stories that you told today and take them to their hearts. At the end of the day, we are all just humans, even though sometimes I'm really lacking to find that in some of my colleagues. I had this nice speech ready for this conference, but you left me totally speechless. So I'll just try to be myself and say that coming from a small nation, it is obvious to us that we know that all the international order shall be laid upon the rule of law. European Union itself was founded on the rule of law. And we Europeans are so proud of ourselves when we speak about the rule of law in all other occasions, all other crises. Somehow we act superior to the others because we do adhere to the rule of law. But nothing matters when it comes to the Middle East and Gaza. Most of my colleagues were deaf a year ago when just 3 countries from within the EU, Ireland, Spain, and Slovenia, called and called and called, recognized Palestine, and called more for the release of hostages as well, but for the ceasefire and for lifting the blockade. And then there was this hope, big hope, not just a slimmer, big hope when the ceasefire was achieved. We all believed that yes, perhaps there is real hope for a Palestinian nation. But it was all just a lie by the Israeli government. And it was not a coincidence, because immediately after, the horrors continued. And now there is nothing else but to call it out loud. We have to stop it. And yes, most of the time, even though we are at the Security Council of the United Nations as Slovenia, even when we have a seat at the European Union and NATO, one country cannot do it all. But if we convince enough of our fellow leaders, then perhaps we can do the first step. United Nations are blocked by the US, unfortunately so. But the EU still has a chance to make at least the first move of real pressure by suspension of the association agreement with Israel. If we truly believe that it's the rule of law which is where the Europe is based upon, then there is no other choice. I fully expect that the European Commission this week will come with an analysis stating it out clearly and loudly that Israel is violating the international humanitarian law. And if that is so, European leaders have no other choice but to suspend the agreement. I fully expect that they will follow the suit. It might seem helpless at the time, but there is no other way than to persist, because I fully concur. Every and each day, more and more Palestinians, mostly women and kids and children, are being killed. And every and each of us should do its part. And again, big thanks to the doctors, to the humanitarian workers on the ground. And now it's up to us, to the European leaders, to show whether we are still human or not.
Thank you. And now we will move to another person who is in position of power, to another colleague of us, Nico, who is Vice President of European Parliament, who will also speak why it is important to suspend the trade agreement between Israeli government and European Union. Nico, I'm giving you the word.
Thank you so much. I hope you see me and can hear me. Good. Hello, Mr. Prime Minister. Hello to all the medical doctors. Hello to all the staff of My Voice, My Choice. I'm a proud supporter of your initiative, and I'm so proud of you that you've given your visibility to this very important topic. I was very impressed by what the Prime Minister said. Slovenia is not a small state. Slovenia is one of the 27 member states that has the same power sitting in the council as all the other ones. So it is important that member states such as that speak up and are in favor of Commission launching the suspension of the association agreement, because it is important that as many member states as possible do this step. As you know, a lot of them are shy to do this step directly. I come from the European Parliament, and we had a session in Strasbourg, and quite frankly, a lot of the times I wish the numbers were higher. Just as Nika said, a lot of members stray away from from calling a spade a spade. They don't call a genocide. They negotiate about terms. They negotiate about measures. There's always talk about humanitarian aid, but at the same time, humanitarian aid is impeded. It's not possible on the ground a lot of the times, most of the times. I listened to Graham, for instance, with his experience, and I was so impressed that he made this comparison with the Second World War and with Japan. I know that Slovenia has been a nation that has avoided war, but has seen the bloodshed of what the Balkan Wars brought about. And when we think of it, you know, we said never again to Srebrenica, yet here we have again Gaza. So what I wish to say is the following. Nevertheless, the European Parliament has started to make concrete steps. Just this week, we had a debate that clearly used the term genocide. That means it had the sufficient numbers to use it. This is the first time in the Parliament. I know that many of the supporters are wondering why so late. However, I prefer to have a later reconnaissance than never. At the same time, people start talking about arms embargo, about sanctions on individuals, on ministers, on perpetrators of this horrific war on the population of Gaza. We did not take a vote to this effect, but I do believe the message was very strong in the debate that we had in Strasbourg about the association agreement, about the EC taking steps to suspend it. What I want to say is the following. We've been very, very active on UNRWA, on humanitarian aid, on supporting any type of humanitarian aid. A lot of the times, maybe in the shadows, the fact that when the Freedom Flotilla entered the waters of Gaza and was apprehended, our president, Roberta Metsola, was involved in conducting bilateral diplomacy with the Israeli government for the release of the members of the Freedom Flotilla. That is not much. I know that the public expects much, much more. However, I am convinced that the political momentum is growing. The political momentum is growing. And Prime Minister, you should never say that your country is small, or Ireland or other countries who have been so vocal, or Spain or others, who have been vocal on this issue. No, you are leaders, you are not small. And I would like to conclude with the fact that the same applies to what My Voice, My Choice is doing. They had a choice to focus only on the issue of abortion. Not only, you know, it's a huge issue that I supported, and I'm so glad of their success. But yet they couldn't stay silent. They couldn't stay silent, and they expanded to this very, very important issue, and given the 1.2 million people who have signed, another chance to support another critical issue. So I'm here with you. I'm going to be an ally all the way to the end, and let's get action done.
Thank you so much. Again, I will give the word to another person with some power. We invited all the members of European Parliament to sign the initiative to suspend the agreement. Not all of them are brave enough to do it. Not all of them are brave enough to speak publicly about this, but one of them is here with us. I will ask you to introduce yourself and give you the word, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for organizing this press conference, Nika, on a very important topic. So my name is Chloé Ridel. I'm a member of the European Parliament. I'm from France, and I'm part of the Socialist and Democrat group. And along with other political groups, not all of them, unfortunately, but also with the Greens or with the left, we have been advocating for a year and a half now for the suspension of the association agreement between the EU and Israel. And since then, it has been said before me, Israel has breached all the rules of international law and humanitarian law. And the EU has been not only silent, but complicit with the government of Israel for almost 2 years now. It has done nothing. And it's not only because the EU is divided and member states are divided. Even if you cannot reach a unanimity among member states, it is the duty of the European Commission as a supranational institution to do something. And it should have been the duty of the European Commission to launch the review and to demand the suspension of the EU-Israel Association Agreement for a long time now. Because we now know that since October 2024, Kaja Kallas had on her desk a report from the human rights representative of the European Union showing with a large round of details what was happening in Gaza, the war crimes and crimes against humanity happening there. And nothing was done. When the International Court of Justice said in April 2024 that there was a risk of genocide in Gaza, the EU should have suspended the association agreement. When an arrest warrant was issued by the International Criminal Court against Netanyahu in June 2024, the EU should have acted. So the EU chose to act now, and it's timid because it's only a review that was announced of the EU-Israel Association Agreement, but now we need to push for finally a suspension if the EU is willing to claim that human rights are important to its values. Otherwise, we won't be respected anymore, and we won't be coherent with ourselves anymore. So it's very important now to push for the suspension, and I thank My Voice, My Choice for not letting it away. I mean, for fighting for that now, especially now, because with the war in Iran now, waged by Israel, there is a distraction from what is happening in Gaza, and we could see it in this week plenary session in Strasbourg, where my group, Socialists and Democrats, asked for a debate, especially on the revision of the EU-Israel Association Agreement, and the debate was transformed and was mixed with what was happening in Iran. So we can see that there is a tentative from Israel to distract European leaders from what is happening in Gaza with their war in Iran. And we shouldn't let that happen, because we can see that some European leaders, as Friedrich Merz, for instance, in Germany, are trying to say that now we have to protect Israel from Iran and stop the suspension of the EU-Israel agreement. This would be very wrong, and so we need to push for it now, because we know that on Monday, Kaja Kallas will give her assessment of whether the human rights clause of the Israel Association Agreement is breached. For us, there is no debate. Of course, it is breached, but we know that this is a key moment. And even if we cannot, in the end, suspend totally the EU-Israel agreement, because for that we need unanimity of member states, we can, with a majority, suspend the trade components of that association agreement. And we know that this is the major tool we have, the major pressure tool we have towards the Israel government, because as a reminder, there are $41 billion trade relations between Israel and the European Union, and the European Union is the biggest trade partner of Israel. So this is the key. We have to suspend the trade. We need a majority of member states so that we can suspend the trade aspects of this agreement. So again, thank you very much, and let's keep up the fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for speaking up. So from the doctors, president of the government, vice president of European Parliament, members of Parliament of Europe, now we will just go to our movement part. We spoke a lot about My Voice, My Choice already. I will just give the word to one of the leaders from My Voice, My Choice community to briefly speak about the petition that we are running and the steps that we are taking. Matteo, the word is yours.
Hello, thank you for having me. I would just take a moment to thank the doctors who have been to Gaza for sharing their testimonial, which was very moving. And I want to thank you for your work. And I also want to thank everyone who's here on this call for speaking up for the suspension of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. I want to say that everything that I've heard justifies why already over 181,000 people have signed our campaign, our petition. We, Znika, we are citizens of the EU, and we decided that as citizens, we could not step back and watch a genocide happening in Palestine without taking actions. Silence is complicity, and we cannot stay silent in front of a genocide. So we decided to launch a petition calling on the European Commission to suspend the EU-Israel Trade Association Agreement. This petition is going directly, as it has been said before, to Kaja Kallas, who is the High Representative of the EU when it comes to foreign affairs. Kaja Kallas has a responsibility towards EU citizens to propose a suspension of this agreement because it violates human rights. And it is not normal that we Europeans promote values and then still do trade with a country that is doing a genocide in 2025. This campaign is people-powered, is made from grassroots, but it's growing very fast. It's taking a lot of power, and now politicians are joining us, and it's very important that we keep the pressure as high as possible until Monday, when Kaja Kallas will publish her assessments on the breach or not, or the Article 2. We have the people, we have the politicians, but we need the journalists. We need you to speak about the genocide that is happening in Gaza. We need you to take a close look at what the EU is doing, at whether on Monday Kaja Kallas will propose a suspension or not, and also Wednesday, when there will be the meeting of foreign ministers on whether they advocate for the suspension of the EU-Israel agreement or not. We cannot finance as the EU a genocide in 2025. We citizens are taking actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matteo. And in this action, we are also closely connected with Avas. Fadi, a dear friend, will also speak now about the next steps and what is in front of us next week.
Thank you very much, Nika. And I want to begin on behalf of global human rights organizations, humanitarian organizations, and also people in Palestine, to just show deep gratitude to the Prime Minister, to the members of the European Parliament, to the doctors, to My Voice, My Choice, for taking this courageous step. Although it shouldn't be seen and it shouldn't require courage to say the most basic thing, which is that those who starve children, those who take the lives of mothers and destroy hospitals, should be held accountable. It is becoming one of the most courageous things to do, particularly in the West. So thank you for taking that step. And I want to also say that this work, although it will, and the core and most urgent goal is to save the lives of innocent people now facing genocide and ethnic cleansing in Palestine, I also believe that this is a battle for the soul of Europe. As the Prime Minister spoke about very clearly, those who are defending the rule of law, those who are defending human rights, those who are defending the values that many Europeans fought for and died for valiantly over the last century, are the ones that hopefully, and if they succeed in holding Israel accountable, will be the ones that have saved Europe from a path that could be more dangerous for all of us. So thank you for taking that crucial step. And I do believe that there's an opportunity for us to achieve success, although the balance of forces is tilted against this effort to suspend the preferential trade agreement with Israel. But in fact, we have now a leak of the report, a leak of the review, which very clearly states, and we've seen it, very clearly states that Israel is in violation of Article 2, has breached it, has violated human rights in Palestine, something that you would need to be blind not to see. And consequently, now the ball is in the court first next week, is in the hands of the High Representative, Kaja Kallas, who should very vocally say and recommend, without a quiver in her voice, she should look the children of Gaza in the eye and says that this breach requires urgent action and suspension. And then it moves into the hands of European leaders who, we believe, if 65% of them come together, and that is very possible to do with public pressure across Europe, will be able to force at least a suspension of, as was mentioned by the members of parliament, parts of the preferential trade agreement, which would be key. So the question now is how to build up the pressure to make that happen. And the petition, I recommend those who haven't signed or shared the petition to, of course, do that. There will also be next Wednesday, ahead of the heads of state meeting that's happening in Europe, an event where very large images of the children in Gaza who are victims of this conflict will be placed in central Brussels. We can send you the invitation in John Ray Square. And there will also be doctors there present who you can interview and who will speak to in a short press briefing, but it will be an opportunity for journalists in particular, and also for European diplomats and leaders to not just see the faces of the children in Gaza, but to speak to the people who have been there as they make this decision. And I hand it back to you, Nika.
Thank you, Fadi. So we came to an end of this press conference. I want to sum up. When innocent people are being killed, when innocent kids are being massacred, when genocide is happening, it is our duty to speak up. It is our duty to speak up no matter who we are. If we are a president of the government, if we are vice president of European Parliament, if we are just ordinary citizens, together we can achieve change. This is taking way too long, and we need to be louder, we need to be stronger, and we need to do more. And I think that all of us speaking on this press conference can say that we won't stop and that we will push even harder. I'm extremely grateful for all of you who were here and who spoke up today. Now the next goal is clear. It's the suspension of the trade agreement between Israeli government and European Union. The next goal is to end the genocide and to stop the suffering. And we can only achieve this together. Every single voice cannot do a lot, but when we come together, we can move mountains. And it is really time to do this. Thank you for being here. And this is all from all of us.